All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Michelle Chen. Michelle is a journalist who has worked for outlets including The Nation magazine and In These Times. She is the co-host, along with Sarah Jaffe, of the podcast Belabored for Dissent magazine, all of which you can find on her Twitter account, which is Michelle Chen. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, so Michelle, last week, the fast food worker movement actually held the largest strike, not only in the United States, but it actually spread to countries all over the world. Tell us what actually happened at some of these strikes last week.
Well, this is the first time that the fast food movement that started in New York in late 2012 went global, in a sense. They staged actions in a total of about 230 cities in some 33 countries. That's what the campaign's site says. And they were linked together with, under the sort of broad banner of $15 in a union, which of course, makes the most sense to people here in the United States. In fact, we learned from this campaign that, McDonald's workers in Denmark earn way more than $15 an hour. But it was a great show of solidarity in terms of just bringing together people who know this universal symbol of the Golden Arches primarily as consumers, but now we're starting to recognize that it's really part of a massive global labor system that's built on the exploitation of 1.7 million McDonald's employees around the world, something like that. So it's a massive population that is beholden to the fast food sector. And these jobs, while, each country's fast food system is a little bit different, mainly they're premised on low wages, very precarious work, erratic schedules, and just general sort of mistreatment of workers. And while there have been some examples of fast food workers who have successfully organized and been able to push for better conditions at their outlets in their countries in accordance with their labor laws, the campaign really wanted to bring attention to sort of the global inequalities that are perpetuated by the fast food industry.
Yeah, it was really, really impressive. And I've personally been to some of the fast food strikes that happen here in Boston. But when you see it's impressive because it's really, really the challenges of actually trying to organize at an individual fast food restaurant are really, really complicated because the turnover there is so high. The management can be very, very retaliatory against people who actually try to do that. And one of the nice things about the fast food worker strikes is that they actually, like when people do this, they actually try to have lawyers actually march them back into work to make sure that the bosses there and the managers there know that if retaliation happens, there will be consequences. There still have been some consequences, but it's still, nice for these, workers who are not making very much to actually see that they have some people who have their back. But what was so cool was looking at like some of the photos that were coming in from around the world. And it really is just sort of, it goes to show that this is something that's not just about America. It's something that's actually happening all over the globe. And that's what, and so workers being exploited is something that happens everywhere. And so, and some places obviously much more than others, but it really was pretty inspiring to see all of these workers kind of standing together, in some 30 plus countries.
Right. And I think this sort of global rise in workers' consciousness really parallels the very public and the, social media savvy nature of the campaign. And I think what you were talking about in terms of just workers feeling like they're supported, I mean, yes, of course, having like the National Lawyers Guild get your back, just in case a boss retaliates against you on a local level is great. But I think primarily the strength of the movement has been its ability to kind of resonate with the public and its ability to kind of show a public face without, and really present kind of the human side behind fast food labor, because, the way the business model is structured, it's designed to kind of dehumanize these people. And of course, that is, undergirded by a general public perception of fast food work is just crap work, right? This is just a job that you do just to scrape by. It can't be a good job. It can't be a career. And of course, now, the fast food workers movement has managed to kind of shift the ground in terms of the political conversation around that by saying, look, this does have the potential to be a decent job that treats people well if these businesses would just change their practices, if policymakers would change industrial policy so that people do have the opportunity to organize in their workplaces and assert some kind of power over their working conditions. And, 2 years ago, if you said somebody flipping burgers deserves $15 an hour, people would have laughed at you, right? But look at how the public discourse has changed. And I think that's, the change in perception, while very, very difficult to measure, I think is having an immeasurable impact on the way this movement has managed to spread.
Yeah, and also just the education when it comes to the fact that these low-wage jobs affect us all and actually cost us all, not even just to the economy itself, but the fact that again, this is well documented that the McDonald's has in their training video how to sign up for food stamps and stuff like that, where it's we're very clearly these jobs McDonald's or Walmart, these low wage jobs, they do not pay enough to sustain someone. That living off the minimum wage is not enough to actually live in the vast majority of this country, and the fact is we are subsidizing these jobs. Period. By the fact that these people are working full time and they can't afford just the basic necessities to live.
Right. It's if you think fast food workers somehow deserve to be condemned to poverty because of the crappiness of the job that they do, you're actually paying their salary right now every time you pay taxes, right? Because they're receiving an indirect subsidy, and it's absolutely they are so poor that they absolutely deserve those entitlements. But what does it say about the nature of our economy when we have grinding poverty structured into the business model of one of the wealthiest corporations in the world?
Yeah. Do you know, actually, have there been any reports of have there been retaliation? Do we know how some of these across the country, not across the country, across the globe, how these workers were treated when they went out on strike? Has there been any reports back yet of any type of retaliation, or were they treated well? Do we know what any of the actual response?
Yeah, I know there have been sort of periodic reports in the months preceding of every time there was a strike, maybe a worker wasn't allowed back, or there seemed to be fired under arbitrary circumstances because they had taken a day off. Often it's very difficult to prove these things, but generally speaking, and this again goes back to the public pressure thing. When workers have raised a stink about it, they've in many cases they've been allowed back to work. And I actually spoke with someone who was telling me that she had planned to participate in the strike, and she was known at her workplace for being someone who was very active with the fast food workers movement. And suddenly the Thursday that she was supposed to be striking, she was normally scheduled to work that day, but abruptly the manager decided to take her off that day, right? Just to sort of preemptively kind of take away her power to strike on that day. And so there are these very subtle forms of retaliation that, wouldn't pass muster in a court of law, but definitely, just this very corrosive kind of overarching pressure on workers to comply with the manager is very strong. So, and that's what makes it difficult to organize, right? People are constantly have kind of this low level anxiety that kind of haunts them all day about, whether or not, one bad move is going to lead the boss to cut their hours or something like that.